To make your going round in circles box, you're going to need 6 going round in circles blocks. 1 for the lid, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the sides, and 1 for the bottom. Now, the bottom one, don't put a button on it. So just stitch it in circles, but don't add a button. Your going round in circle squares are a bit floppy. So if you want to make them into a box, you're going to have to make them a little bit stiffer so that they will stand up. Now, I'm using some Vilene stiffener to put into these squares, but you can also use cardboard or whatever else you've got that can make the sides a bit stiffer. Now I'm going to put the stiffener into the center of my square, and then I'm going to put another piece of fabric on top, and I'm going to pin it round the sides. You do all 4 sides, you do all 6 squares, and then I'm going to take it over to the machine and do a straight stitch right round the edge of my square so that the stiffener remains inside and I have a finished square. I've added stiffener to all my squares. As you can see, no floppy squares anymore, and I've stitched all around the edge with a straight stitch on the sewing machine. You can do this by hand as well, but I prefer using the machine. And you can see it better on this side. See the whole line of stitching going round the square. Now my next step is I'm going to neaten the edges a bit, trim. You know, there's a little bit of fabric that's sticking out, so I'm going to trim that, and then I'm going to go back to the machine and do a zigzag all the way around all of my squares. So that's the next step. Trim when necessary and do a zigzag around the square. If you don't have a machine, once again, you can do this by hand as well. I've zigzagged round the edges, as you can see, to give the squares a neat finish. Now my next step, to make it look even better, I'm going to add some yarn to the edge, once again with a zigzag. Now the important thing to remember is that you don't want to start doing that at a corner. So start somewhere in the middle of one side, in the center of one side, stitch to the corner, go around to the next side, and that one, and that one, and then you'll be back where you started, and you just overstitch a tiny bit to make sure everything is covered. Okay, now when I'm doing that, I like to start on this. For example, this is the lid, this is the front side of the lid, and this is the back. So I'm going to start and finish my stitching around it there, because it, you know, I find you see less of it. Sometimes it gets a little bit messy, and if you've got it sitting on the front, you'll see it a lot more than if you've got it sitting on the back. And the same goes for the sides. This is the top, that's the bottom. I'm going to start stitching at the bottom, go round and finish it off at the bottom again. Okay, so with a zigzag, stitch around the edges, adding the yarn to the edges. Now if you don't have a sewing machine, once again you can do this by hand as well. Okay, so I've finished stitching the edges, so you can see they've now got the yarn going round all of the edges, and the next step is to start putting the box together. Now I'm going to start with the sides, so I'm going to put the lid and the bottom to one side and get my 4 sides. So I'm going to start stitching these two together. Now to do that, I'm going to get a needle and thread and just do an overhand stitch through the edges. So I'm not going to go where the stiffener is because that's going to be really hard stitching. So I'm just going to catch the edges and stitch from one corner to the other. When I've done that, I'm going to do the others, and then I'm going to join them all together, and I will have the start of my box, as you can see. Okay, so let's get stitching. I need my thimble and a needle with some thread. I'm going to attach the thread first. I'm going to do that from the back. Just put it in through there, go to the corner. Give it an extra stitch, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And then check that I've got them all the right side up. Yep. There we go. Start in the corner. Just make sure you give them a couple of extra stitches on the corner because that's where most of the tension is going to be if there's a problem. And then just start going down with a simple whip stitch. You see that? Just a really simple stitch to join the edges. Now the only thing you have to do is keep an eye on the other corner so that things don't shift and you end up with one longer piece, because that's going to be really hard to fix when you're at the end. Okay, so I think you've got the idea. Just keep doing that simple stitch till you get to the corner. Now I've almost reached the corner, as you can see, so I've got a couple more stitches to do. And then at the corner I'm going to give it an extra stitch or two just to make sure that it won't fall apart. Okay, then I'm going to put my needle through there to the back, the inside of the box. You won't see so much, and I'll just thread it through here. There you go, to finish it. Okay, so that's one side of the box stitched. Okay, see that? And you can already start standing it up. So, next two sides, stitch these two together, and then when you've got these stitched together, you can join the whole lot together. Okay? So I've now stitched all four sides of the box together, and you can see you've already got a nice little box. So the next step is to add the bottom. So you're going to do that in the same way that you've stitched the sides. It's just, you know, a little bit more of a puzzle because you can't fold them together. But you're just going to stitch around all four sides with the same whip stitch that you've used to stitch these. I finished stitching the bottom to the box. So if you want a box without a lid, then your box is now finished. But if you want to add a lid, then there's a couple of other steps you need to take. So first you're going to have to stitch your lid to your box, and we're going to do that in the same way that I stitched all the other edges. So it's with a simple whip stitch from one corner to the other corner. Now the lid's attached as well, you can see, and the only thing left to do is to make a little cord from attached to this button so that you can close your lid by linking it around that one. So I've already cut the thread. To attach it to the button. I'm going to make a braid. Go divide into 3. And keep going until it's long enough or until your thread runs out. And that's it. Your box is finished. Okay, here you go. All done. I hope you enjoyed the video and happy stitching.